in a glass case. The surviving leaves of the Greek Codex Panopolitanus preserve part of a vision written more than 1,000 years before the manuscript itself was copied. The pages are damaged, the ink faded, yet the scene remains unmistakable. Enoch is brought before a heavenly throne. Beneath it, the text describes streams of blazing fire. Around it stand powers who do not cross the boundary. That is the basic answer. The Book of Enoch does place something beneath the throne of God, fire flowing out from below it, within a chamber described through crystal, flame, and unbearable light. But the text does not say that angels keep a forbidden secret or refuse to speak about it. Its tension is different. They cannot enter freely. They cannot behold the divine face. Even Enoch collapses before the vision. The account appears in 1 Enoch 14 inside the Watcher's narrative, where Enoch is sent to carry judgment to rebellious angels. Yet three details remain unresolved. Is the fire a literal feature of heaven, a symbol of judgment, or temple imagery transformed into cosmic architecture? Why is Enoch, a human scribe, permitted to approach where angels remain outside? And why does the throne appear not as a seat in a calm court, but as the center of something moving, burning, and dangerous? The manuscript preserves the description. It does not preserve an explanation. And that silence may be the most important detail of all. That silence survives because the vision did not reach us through a single manuscript. The work now called 1 Enoch is a collection of writings composed over time, preserved most completely in gaze within the Ethiopian Christian tradition. Yet the throne vision belongs to the Book of the Watchers, generally identified as the earliest major section, covering chapters 1 through 36. Fragments found among the Dead Sea Scrolls confirm that this material circulated in Aramaic during the Second Temple period. Several copies of Enochic writings were recovered from Cave 4 at Qumran, including manuscripts catalogued as 4Q201 and 4Q202. Paleographic dating places these copies in the last centuries before the Common Era. These fragments do not preserve every line of chapter 14 parts, but they establish that the Watcher's narrative existed centuries before the surviving Ethiopian manuscripts. A Greek witness adds another layer. The Codex Panopolitanus, also known as the Akhmim manuscript, was discovered in an Egyptian tomb in the 19th century and preserves portions of 1 Enoch 1 through 32, including the heavenly ascent. Copied many centuries after the Aramaic fragments, it records the throne chamber in language of crystal, fire, and flowing streams. The Ge'ez version preserves the same architecture, though translation choices sometimes alter the texture of individual phrases. This transmission matters because no single witness allows us to treat every detail as untouched wording from the earliest composition. What survives is a textual chain Aramaic fragments, Greek copies, and the complete Ethiopic tradition, each still carrying part of the evidence. The central scene is therefore ancient, but its precise vocabulary must be handled cautiously. And one word in that vocabulary may determine whether the fire beneath the throne is a river, a boundary, or something more severe. The word that opens the question is not hidden in a later commentary. It sits inside the vision itself. The text states that Enoch is lifted by winds, carried through clouds, and brought to a structure whose outer walls resemble crystals. Inside, he sees a second house greater than the first. Its floor appears as fire. Its ceiling is described through moving stars and lightning. At the center stands a lofty throne, bright like hoarfrost, encircled by something like the shining sun. Beneath it flow streams of flaming fire. Then the description becomes more severe. No angel can enter. No flesh can look upon the face of the glorious and most high. Thousands upon thousands stand before him, but they do not approach as equals. Enoch himself falls on his face, trembling, until a voice summons him nearer. The text does not identify a concealed object beneath the throne. What it gives is a flow. Fire moves outward from the place of judgment. Some scholars interpret this as part of a broader ancient Near Eastern and biblical language of divine presence, where fire marks holiness, danger, and authority. Others emphasize its judicial function. Enoch has come to deliver a sentence against the Watchers, and the throne appears as the source from which that sentence proceeds. The architecture also resembles a temple, but magnified beyond ordinary scale. There is an outer chamber, an inner chamber, restricted access, and a central presence that cannot be safely approached. The comparison is interpretive, not proof that the author copied a single earthly sanctuary, yet it changes the scene. The fire below the throne is not merely decoration. It marks the boundary between created beings and the authority they cannot cross. That may explain why the angels do not speak of what lies beneath it. The surviving text never assigns them that silence. Their restraint is spatial. They remain outside. But Enoch is called forward. Why would a human messenger be permitted to cross a boundary that even the heavenly attendants do not freely pass? Because Enoch is not invited as a worshiper. He is summoned as a witness and a courier of judgment. Before the ascent, the watchers ask him to write a petition on their behalf. They have abandoned their appointed station, taken human wives, and produced violent offspring. Enoch carries their request upward, but in the throne chamber, the direction of speech reverses. The angels do not receive an answer through their own authority. The human scribe is told to return and speak to them. In 1 Enoch 15 and 16, the verdict is uncompromising. The watchers are rebuked for seeking wives and children. Though they were described as spiritual and immortal, their giant offspring will die. Yet the spirits proceeding from them will remain upon the earth as destructive spirits. The text presents this as an explanation for continuing violence and corruption. It is theology expressed as cosmic history, not archaeological evidence. This changes the meaning of the throne vision. The fire beneath the throne is followed immediately by a sentence that descends from heaven into the human world. What Enoch sees above is matched by what he must announce below. The flow of fire and the flow of judgment occupy the same narrative movement. Some scholars read this scene as an inversion of authority. The watchers possess heavenly status, but they require a mortal intermediary. Enoch possesses no angelic rank, yet he is admitted, addressed, and commissioned. The text does not explain this by saying he is naturally greater than angels. His authority is borrowed. He speaks because the enthroned one commands him to speak. And the silence of the angels becomes more precise. It is not silence about a hidden object beneath the throne. It is the silence of condemned beings who cannot secure their own defense. They wait outside the chamber while a human receives the answer they feared. But the verdict contains another disturbing claim. The punishment of the watchers does not end the consequences of their rebellion. Something remains active after the giants die. Something the text says will continue afflicting the earth. If the throne is the source of judgment, why does the judgment leave evil still moving below? The surviving wording makes that problem sharper because a small translation choice changes the entire picture. In many English versions of 1 Enoch 14:19, streams of flaming fire come from beneath the throne. But the surrounding lines also describe the throne's appearance as crystal, its wheels like the shining sun, and the vision of cherubim. The scene therefore combines two images that modern readers often separate: a fixed royal seat and a mobile divine chariot. That detail matters. In biblical throne visions, especially Ezekiel 1 and 10 wheels, living beings, fire, and divine glory belong to one moving structure. The Book of Enoch does not simply copy Ezekiel line by line, and similarity does not prove direct dependence in every phrase. Yet the shared imagery suggests that beneath the throne may describe the active lower region of a throne chariot, not a concealed chamber containing an unnamed secret. Older translations can make the sequence sound more mechanical than the surviving textual evidence allows. The Greek and Ethiopic witnesses do not preserve every nuance with equal clarity, and punctuation was supplied by modern editors. Whether the fire is imagined as issuing from below the throne itself, from its wheeled base, or from the surrounding divine presence cannot be settled with absolute precision. Still, one point remains firm. The text names fire, wheels, and cherubic imagery. It does not name a hidden creature, prison, abyss, or forbidden object beneath God's seat. Those ideas belong to later interpretation unless another source is explicitly introduced. The small wording difference produces a larger implication. The mystery may not concern what is stored below the throne. It may concern what the throne is. If it is a throne chariot, then the fire beneath it is not merely a boundary. It is part of the mechanism by which judgment moves. Modern manuscript work tests that possibility without treating the vision as a photograph of heaven. Textual critics begin with the surviving witnesses. The Aramaic fragments from Qumran are earlier but incomplete. The Greek text preserves more of the throne vision, while the Ethiopic manuscripts preserve the whole work through a much later copying tradition. Scholars compare repeated phrases, word order, omissions, and translation habits, asking where different versions reflect an older reading and where a copyist or translator may have reshaped the sentence. Paleography adds another control. Letter forms can place a manuscript within a broad historical period, while archaeological context can show where it was deposited. Neither method proves when the original vision was first composed, and neither confirms that its imagery describes a physical reality. Modern imaging can sometimes recover ink that has faded into darkened parchment or papyrus. Multispectral photography separates wavelengths invisible to the naked eye, allowing damaged letters to emerge from stains, from folds, or erased surfaces. But this method does not create missing text. Where a fragment has broken away, no camera can restore the lost material with certainty. That limitation matters here. No known imaging result has revealed an omitted creature, secret chamber, or forbidden name beneath the throne in 1 Enoch 14. The strongest surviving readings still point to fire flowing from below the throne and to a structure associated with wheels, radiance, and cherubic imagery. Reconstruction can clarify letters. It cannot turn silence into evidence. The modern connection is therefore methodological. A throne vision that sounds fluid in translation is actually assembled from witnesses separated by language, geography, and centuries, like restoring several damaged copies of the same map. Researchers can identify overlapping lines, but a blank edge remains blank. This does not prove that the author imagined a literal celestial vehicle. It shows only that mobile throne imagery was part of the textual world in which the scene was composed and transmitted. Yet the closer the manuscripts are compared, the more deliberate the combination appears: temple boundaries, judicial fire, and a throne capable of movement. If judgment can move from heaven toward earth, where did ancient readers believe that movement ended? The movement did not end in one tradition, because the Book of Enoch itself did not travel along a single road. Among ancient Jewish communities, Enochic writings circulated widely enough for multiple copies to be deposited near Qumran. That physical evidence shows use and preservation. It does not prove that every Jewish group accepted the work as scripture. Later, Rabbinic Judaism did not include 1 Enoch in the Hebrew Bible, and the book disappeared from most Jewish manuscript traditions. Early Christians received it differently. The New Testament letter of Jude closely parallels 1 Enoch 1:9 and explicitly attributes a prophecy to Enoch. Writers such as Tertullian treated the work with respect, while others questioned texts that lacked broad acceptance or secure transmission. Over time, 1 Enoch was excluded from the biblical canons used by most Greek, Latin, and Syriac churches. No surviving evidence supports the claim that a single council secretly removed it. Canon formation was gradual, regional, and contested. But in the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo tradition, 1 Enoch remained part of the broader biblical canon and survived in Ge'ez manuscripts. That preservation is the reason the complete work is available today. European scholars encountered Ethiopic copies in the modern period, and the Dead Sea Scroll discoveries later confirmed that major sections had ancient Jewish roots. The conflict, then, was not simply belief against suppression. It concerned authority, language, circulation, and which inherited texts communities continued to copy. A book can vanish without being burned. It can disappear because readers stop reproducing it. That history affects the throne vision. Most later Christians knew Ezekiel, Daniel, and Revelation, but not the full Enochic account linking the fiery throne directly to the judgment of the Watchers. Ethiopian readers preserved that connection. Other traditions inherited only echoes, detached from the narrative that once explained who approached the throne and why. So the question is no longer merely what lay beneath the throne. It is why one branch of Christianity kept the entire vision, while most others remembered only fragments of its imagery. and whether anything important was lost in that narrowing. The narrowing is still visible in the evidence scholars possess today. The Qumran fragments prove that Enochic writings circulated in Aramaic, but they do not preserve a complete copy of the throne vision. The Greek Codex Panopolitanus preserves the scene, yet it is itself incomplete and ends long before the entire work concludes. The Ethiopic tradition preserves the full text, but through manuscripts copied many centuries after the earliest fragments. That leaves a present-day problem. Researchers can compare witnesses, identify agreements, and reconstruct likely older readings, but they cannot inspect the author's original manuscript. No autograph survives. No complete Aramaic copy of 1st Enoch has been recovered. Every conclusion about the precise wording beneath the throne depends on a chain of transmission with damaged links. One uncertainty concerns the relationship between the fiery streams, the throne's wheels, and the cherubic imagery. Are these separate details gathered from older prophetic traditions, or parts of one coherent celestial machine? Some scholars emphasize literary dependence on Ezekiel. Others stress a broader shared tradition of divine throne imagery. The evidence permits comparison, but not a final verdict about exactly how the author constructed the scene. Another uncertainty is archaeological. Qumran yielded multiple Enochic manuscripts, showing that the work mattered to at least one ancient collection. Yet no excavation can reveal how every Jewish or Christian community interpreted the passage, or whether readers imagined the fire literally, symbolically, liturgically, or all three at once. The fragments answer one question and reopen another. The vision is genuinely ancient. Its central imagery was not invented by medieval Ethiopian copyists. But the earliest surviving physical witnesses still do not preserve enough of this passage to tell us whether one crucial word, one missing line, or one lost explanatory phrase once clarified what the fire beneath the throne was meant to be. Now, an important distinction is necessary. The physical evidence consists of manuscripts and fragments. They show that Enochic writings circulated in ancient Judaism, that the throne vision survived in Greek, and that the complete work was preserved in Ge'ez. The textual evidence states that fiery streams flow from beneath the throne, that wheels and cherubic imagery surround it, and that access to the divine presence is restricted. That evidence does not prove that a literal celestial vehicle exists. It does not prove that angels concealed a forbidden object. It does not establish that the vision records an eyewitness journey in the modern historical sense. Those claims belong to theology, interpretation, or speculation, not to archaeology. Nor does manuscript survival tell us how ancient audiences privately understood every image. The strongest interpretation is narrower and more difficult. The author presents the throne as the source of judgment. Fire moves from beneath it. Enoch approaches under command. The watchers remain powerless to speak for themselves. The scene combines temple restriction, prophetic throne imagery, and a verdict directed toward the earth. If the fiery streams are part of the throne's active structure, and if the wheels indicate movement rather than ornament, then the larger question becomes whether the author imagined divine judgment not as a distant decree, but as a force that travels from the heavenly court into the human world. That possibility fits the narrative sequence. Enoch sees the throne, receives the sentence, and carries it downward, yet it remains an interpretation. The text never pauses to define the mechanics of heaven. The silence of the angels may therefore have been misunderstood. They do not refuse to reveal what lies beneath the throne. They stand outside a boundary while judgment passes through a human messenger. Their silence is not secrecy. It is loss of authority. And this may be the vision's greatest implication. The most terrifying thing beneath the throne is not a hidden being, chamber, or name. It is the movement of judgment itself. But one final uncertainty remains. If the fire moves outward, what does the text believe it ultimately reaches? The Old Greek leaves remain behind glass. Their edges darken, their lines incomplete. They do not prove that anyone saw the architecture of heaven. They prove something more limited readers copied a vision in which the throne of God was surrounded by crystal, wheels, cherubic forms, and fire flowing from beneath. That fire was not described as a secret. It appeared as the sign of authority, judgment, and distance. The angels did not explain it, because the scene did not place them in control. They stood before the throne, while Enoch, the human scribe, was summoned to receive a sentence and carry it back to the rebels below. The manuscripts preserve that reversal. Heavenly beings lose their voice. A mortal becomes the messenger. The throne does not remain an abstract symbol above history. Its judgment enters the narrative, moves through language, and reaches the earth. Yet the evidence is broken in places. The earliest Aramaic witnesses are fragmentary. The Greek copy is incomplete. The Ethiopic text survives through later manuscripts. Somewhere between them, the original phrasing is gone. So as the faded page rests in its case, one question remains: was the fire beneath the throne meant to mark heaven's boundary? Or the moment when heaven's judgment begins to move?